Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon pre-release guide. So, I know this is going to have a lot of information that's going to be redundant from a lot of my other pre-release guides, but I like making this because each set does do stuff a little bit differently, and I do give a little bit of extra context for what this set is doing for pre-releases nonetheless, and this time I'm going to be covering Special Booster 2.5's pre-release. So when it comes to pre-releases, just like Special Booster 2.0, technically this isn't really a pre-release. It is for all intents and purposes. Bandai just literally called it something else, and it's just a pre-release with an extended window for events to fire when it comes to when stores are going to actually host their events. So the events are going to last for 2.5 between February 21st and March 7th. We do have to note that when it comes to North America, yes, we did get the set delayed, and ours are going to be starting as of February 28th, which is the technical official release date of the set. So we do lose essentially 1 week when it comes to these events, but I don't necessarily think it's that big of a deal because most stores generally only run this event once, maybe twice. So it's just is what it is, and we're still technically getting the set on time. It just means that we don't actually have that pre-release window. But when it comes to this event and why you're participating, you're going to be getting, obviously, the new cards from the set and an alternative way to play the set and cards, but you're also going to be getting a couple of baseline prizing, which is going to be just for participating the BT20 alt art version of Yuki, which is a pretty decent card, especially if you're looking to build a Dark Dragon or Evil Dragon themed deck. Then, just like all other pre-releases, you're going to be getting a pre-release pack, which there's a lot of uncommons and rares in this set, particularly being one of the largest sets that we've had in Digimon. So there's going to be a lot of good cards that you could potentially want to try to pull towards when it comes to those pre-release stamps. Then the winner of the event is going to get the same BT20 alt art Yuki, just this time it's going to be in a foiled texture, which is going to separate it from, well, the not foil versions of the card. Then the store may offer some additional prizing, but that's purely based on the store in terms of what that additional prizing is if they're electing to do any. So when it comes to pre-releases, one thing to keep in mind is that these are a sealed event. So that means you're going to be given 6 packs, you're going to open up all 6 of your packs, and that's the pool of cards that you have to work with in order to build your deck for said event. Then all of the cards that aren't built in your deck or that you're including in your deck is going to be delegated towards your sideboard. So in between games, you could swap in and out cards from your main deck and your sideboard to be able to try to not only make your deck better, but handle various situations that you know that the opponent is going to have or potentially have. But when it comes to the deck construction itself, you're going to be building a 40 card deck out of all of the cards that you opened. Then when it comes to some additional rules, players can ignore Digivolution color requirements, but they still have to meet level and cost of the card, so it just makes Digivolving pretty easy no matter what. Then when it comes to DNA Digivolution, because there are a couple of DNAs in this set, colors can be ignored for DNA Digivolution when it's asking for specific colors to be used. However, when it comes to other special conditions such as level, name, and trait, those still have to be met. Then when it comes to colors, we still have to keep in mind that they still matter on effects. So if a card is asking for a specific color, we cannot ignore that color requirement. So as just a basic example, let's just say your Tamer says your red Digimon gain plus 2000 DP. It doesn't mean all of your Digimon gain plus 2000 DP, it just means your red Digimon. So that's just a base level example. Then when it comes to options, we still have to meet their color requirements in order to actually use the option, which means that we still need to have the corresponding color of a Digimon or Tamer on our field in order to make options useful. Then the only other additional rule that's worth pointing out is during the breeding or raising phase, players can choose to raise a level 3 Digimon, which is pretty decent because it just allows you to have easier access at your raising area, especially if you don't have eggs in your raising area. But we do have to keep in mind you do not draw for this. It's just there just to try to add some extra flexibility with how the breeding or raising area works, especially for sealed and limited events, because there could be situations where you just don't have any eggs, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't play the game. So when it comes to the overall research on what are the most important cards you should be looking at, that's going to usually be the rares and below, because those are going to be the cards that you're going to see more often compared to any other rarity in the game. So understanding how booster box ratios work is only going to be to your benefit, so that way you could understand the specific odds of seeing any given card in the set. And that also could be helpful because it could also give you some information as far as what the opponent could also have. So in a normal booster box, the pull rates, as we know, are an average of 7 SRs per box and 2 hits, which is going to be either a secret rare or an alt art. This being a larger set like it 2.0, Bandai has decided to keep 2.0's box ratios, or at least I believe they would keep the 2.0 box ratios, which is going to be an average of 10 SRs per box and 3 to 4 hits. So that's still pretty generous because that means we have a higher likelihood of seeing higher rarity cards, but the rares and below are still going to be the majority of the cards that you're going to be playing with and make up the bulk of what your cards are actually doing. So that's still what you're going to be wanting to study and put more of your focus on, because you're not guaranteed any given SR that you could potentially pull. Then, with this set being a larger set, it'll also have an impact on the lower rarities too, because that means you're going to see less overall duplicates of the low rarity cards. So that just means that those archetypical support-based cards are going to have less overall impact because they're not going to have all of the cards that they're going to be able to support and synergize with. Then when it comes to Special Booster 2.5, yes, this is again not a normal set. It's similarly to Special Booster 2.0 when just looking at the two sets breakdowns side by side. It just means we get more different commons, about the same uncommons, more rares, about the same super rares, more secret rares, and more special cards. But the special cards really wouldn't count on you pulling because those are going to be of lower pull rates. So what does a normal booster box look like? Just as a frame of reference, this is just the general breakdown of your average normal booster box. We already know the normal pull rates, but it's still just important information to have, so that way you could evaluate what the actual differences are in the likelihood of what you would potentially be pulling towards. So when it comes to the actual deck construction, we know that 40 cards is the deck limit. We can't go over and we obviously can't go under. So when it comes to building your deck, we do have a baseline formula that you kind of want to follow as best as you possibly can to have as good of a curve, so that way you can make sure that the game is as playable as possible. Obviously, there's going to be some variance and deviations. It all is just up to the pools that you have and the pool of cards that you're going to be working with. But when it comes to just a general breakdown, this is just what I've been using in the past, and it seems to work relatively well. So when it comes to actual card analysis, this is where a lot of the information is going to kind of be repeated because it really isn't going to be changing, and that's going to be the acronym that a lot of Magic the Gathering players use, which is BREAD. So B stands for bombs. This is your win condition or cards of higher impact. R is going to be removal, the ability to disrupt the opponent and clear out problematic cards. E is going to stand for evasion. These are going to be your defensive cards, so that way you could try to protect yourself against the opponent. A is going to be aggro, which are going to be your general offensive cards and offensive tools. And then D is going to be duds, the cards you never want to use. And understanding what card falls into what category is going to help you evaluate that card's overall role. And the more roles that the card has, the better that card probably will end up being, and something you want to try to play towards or play with. When it comes to bombs, these are going to usually be Digimon of higher levels. It's not all the time that way, but most of the time it is, because these are some of the strongest Digimon that is going to be in the set. These are cards that'll have a likelihood, a high level of impact on the game that could swing things in your favor, if not winning you the game on their own. Then when it comes to removal, these are going to be cards that are, well, removing problematic cards from the field. We have lots of different ways to deal with the opponent's Digimon. So we have soft removal and hard removal. Hard removal is just meaning that you're actually going to be taking the card and getting rid of it in some way, shape, or form in the multiple different ways that Digimon has to get rid of cards. Soft removal is going to basically keep the card on the field, but make sure it's going to not be as effective or impactful as it normally would be. Then when it comes to evasion, these are your defensive cards to help stave off damage, like blocker or ways to stunlock the opponent's Digimon or give them security attack minus, all abilities that are just trying to help keep you in the game as much as possible. But having protection is also a good form of evasion, because that means your cards are going to be harder for the opponents to deal with because they have some innate way to be able to keep themselves around. Then when it comes to aggro, these are going to be the cards that let you play the game, well, more aggressively to put more pressure on the opponent, especially in the early to mid stages of the game. Generally, it's going to start with cheaper and more efficient stat lines, but there's also plenty of different abilities like rush on delete effects and ways that Digimon are going to be not only protecting themselves, but finding ways to be able to deal extra damage are all additional benefits that you're going to want to look towards in terms of playing cards that are going to help you get to your win condition a little bit better. And lastly, with duds, as I kind of already mentioned, these are the cards that you're going to want to stay as far away from as humanly possible, because these are the cards that are going to be the most useless in the entire set. So these are cards with abilities that you just literally won't be able to use, or cards with incredibly bad stat lines, just because it is expecting cards to be used in combination with it in order to make that bad card now good. Then there's also the likelihood of cards literally asking for cards from outside of the set to be able to make themselves useful, so that's highly problematic when it comes to a sealed and limited environment, because you generally won't have access to those cards. But with card analysis out of the way, let's look at this set's overall Digitama pool, because these are going to be cards that are actually pretty important, because they're going to generally be how you're going to be starting your games, is hatching an egg and digivolving in your raising area. Some Digitamas are going to be better than others, and, well, in this set more particularly, the majority of them are actually pretty bad and abysmal. They're going to be, most of the time, just vanilla cards that you're literally going to be using either for its trait or color, but we do have two standout ones that are actually going to be really good that you're going to want to prioritize over any of the other eggs, because their effects actually could be useful. It is cool to note that this time around, the Digitamas are going to be on the lower rarity, so normally they're on the uncommon slot, but now they're downshifting their rarity to the common slot, so they should be a little bit easier to find and see. Then, when it comes to the Tamers, they're kind of following in the same suit as Digitamas, where the majority of them, because they're asking for specific synergies, just like the Digitamas, are going to be incredibly bad. Most of the time, you're just going to want to use a Tamer just because it's going to help you with the overall tempo of the game, because of the fact that a lot of these cards are more archetypical in design. That's going to mean that the overall cost of evolving is going to be higher than the average, so you're going to want to make sure that you're going to try to play as tempo efficient as possible, which is where the Tamers would help come in at the very least, even if you're not able to use any of their second or tertiary abilities. So, other things to note with this set more specifically, the best advice that I could give, and this kind of extends to any pre-release or sealed event, is you're going to want to play with the more generic cards first and prioritize those, because they're not going to need any synergies in order to actually be good and efficient. So those are going to be the cards that you're going to want to prioritize above all others when it comes to deck construction and card analysis. Then with this set, there are Ace Digimon, but there's not a lot of them, and the majority of them are on the higher rarity side, and they also have Blast DNA Digivolution requirements that are going to be a little bit more specific, asking for specifically named cards, and there's not a lot of Blast DNAs that need color-based evolutions, even though they can just normal DNA for their colors. But regardless, it just means that the overall impact and effectiveness of Ace Digimon is going to be relatively lower, so you could take that for what you will. Then this set, just like Special Booster 2.0, has a lot of archetypes that it's trying to support and a lot of archetypical design that it's trying to play around with. So this can make deck building clunky overall, but there are a couple of noteworthy ones that we want to try to lean and play heavier into, which is going to be Crossheart / Blue Flare, XL, Chronicles, Virus Imperial, Machines and Cyborgs, Examon, and Royal Knights as some of the better archetypes when it comes to Sealed and Limited. So when it comes to general meta tips, as I kind of already alluded to, this is going to be a more tempo-styled format. So you're going to want to have a good, healthy back and forth and try to make your Digimon as impactful and hard to deal with as you possibly can. The other approach that you could take is going to be more of a rookie rush style approach, where you're just going to be hard playing low-level bodies or as efficient bodies as you possibly can and try to rush down the opponent. With a lot of defensive tools, and the more defensive tools there are in a set, that's going to de-incentivize the whole rookie rush-esque strategy, but because of how Cross works, who knows, maybe you have the luck to be able to line those up, and that also can lean into those types of alternative ways to be able to play out your Digimon efficiently and effectively. But for the most part, tempo is going to be the name of the game, and you're just going to try to build a stack and get as much value out of that stack as you possibly can. So I hope with all of this information, you're as prepared for your pre-release as you possibly can be. So with that, feel free to tell me any thoughts you have, especially on how you did in your pre-release, down in the comments below. And if you found this video to be helpful and informative, make sure to leave that like and subscribe on top of ringing that notification bell so you could stay up to date when I stream or upload next. And with that, thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.